Episode 74 of the Slip and Weave podcast. Very special episode this week. I have fellow ITRBoxing contributor Nigel Stewart, aka NiBS. Been trying to get you on for a minute, bro. Appreciate your time today.
We here, baby. I'm ready.
Let's go. It's been a long time coming, bro. Just do me a favor, introduce yourself to everybody. Just let everybody know what you're doing, what you're working on, all the things.
Of course, man. Yeah, my name is Nigel, aka NiBS520. I run the Sounds About Right podcast. I'm also an ITR contributor, write columns and just everyday stuff, man. I'm a fanatic about everything sports, but most especially boxing and football, Chicago, Chi-Town, all the way. You know what I mean? But and also we sold the Don't Shoot Me merchandise coming out soon. So you can find me on ITR. You can find me on Sounds About Right now on Twitter and IG.
That's dope, bro. The hoodie's fucking fire too. That's why I was asking if you were East Coast, because I thought when I had spoken to you before, I thought you were a Chicago guy. I
am a Chicago guy, but I moved to Arizona, man. Got kids, bro. Got 6 goddamn kids. So yeah. I ain't leaving out of here anytime soon.
Bro, so are there any like particularly notable fighters from Chicago?
There's a couple, man, but not recently, to be honest with you. Man, I want to say the last, probably we had a couple of the Diaz's, back in the day, but nobody recent, bro. Like everybody is kind of on the club level right now when it comes to Chicago and boxing. And if I'm being 100% honest with you, dudes are switching up. Like back in the day, it was like, all the boxing clubs were popping. Now dudes are just getting into basketball, football, becoming content creators, and gangs. Gangs are taking us out. We had the one box, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. He was killed a couple years back. He was promising
Ed Brown.
Yeah, he was legit too. He was lights out. And the streets, you know what I mean? Like that's one of the biggest problems in Chicago right now is not only football, basketball, boxing, just scholars. It's taken a lot of these dudes before people even know who they are, man. So there's a lot of people who are from Chicago that are leaving so that they can actually have opportunities to do whatever it is they're doing. But especially in boxing, it's no good right now. Well, we had to clean the city up.
It's really funny because now that we're talking about this, I rewatched the Ringside documentary. Did you ever see that?
Oh, I didn't catch it.
So this was like, I want to say this was like 3 or 4 years ago. And it's basically like a long, it must take place over the course of like 5-10 years. And it's following Kenny Sims. And
okay.
He's from Chicago. That's the only really notable current Chicago fighter I could think of. And it also follows this guy named Destiny Butler. Do you know who that is?
Yeah. Okay. I think I did see bits and pieces of that, but I think I saw it on like YouTube or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great movie. Definitely worth watching, especially you being a Chicago guy. But that's a tough environment to come up and try to have like a successful boxing career in. And it's part of what I think is actually really impressive about Kenny Sims that maybe people don't really understand.
I think Kenny, could be a lot better than what he is. Like I didn't mention him because he kind of fell off a little bit. So I guess, yeah, I mean, of the guys that are coming up, you know what I mean? He's the guy. And unfortunately in boxing today, you catch a couple L's, and people want to forget about you. You know what I mean? So, I'm guilty of it myself.
But bro, that Elvis fight, he looked like $1 million.
His problem is he'll go from looking like, the next Floyd to, a bum. Like he won one night. I don't know if it's a mental thing. I don't know if he's got personal stuff going on. Maybe, his camp didn't go well. I don't know. But, he's Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, in the boxing ring. But when he's on, Oh, forget about it. Yeah, he's automatic.
What's interesting is, did you see his pod with Lukey?
Yes. I caught bits and pieces of it because I'm working.
So, but the reason I bring that up is he basically tells Lukey that he has sickle cell.
Oh yeah, shit.
So that essentially like limits how much oxygen can get in your blood. So he would have this feeling of like, I'm not even tired, but I'm just like not moving properly.
I think that like you that's a problem a lot of boxers have, right? Like not sickle cell specifically, but they'll have medical conditions they don't even know about, because unfortunately a lot of them come from impoverished or in neighborhoods, or they weren't going to doctors regularly. Wasn't it Tiafimo? He had some kind of breathing issue with his a couple fights ago, lost all his belts, right? But he got through it. He shouldn't even have been in the ring. You got a lot of guys have asthma, don't even know they have asthma, and then they'll be completely drained. They look fine. They'll be completely drained and almost on the death's door, at the end of the fight, and nobody knows what's going on. It's because it's untreated, So I think that's a scary thing to be boxing with, bro. Like, if you've got some kind of air issue, sickle cell is, that's a monster in itself.
Yeah, bro. I mean, when I don't know if you saw the interview I did with Corey Spinks, but he pretty much tells me that either before or after the second fight with Zab Judah, that he got diagnosed with Crohn's, which is like a very serious stomach condition. And he fought obviously the rest of his career with that. He fought Jermaine Taylor. He fought, moved up in weight, had good performances. I think it was the same kind of deal for him, where if he was having a flare up, he probably wasn't going to fight that great. If he wasn't having a flare up, he could kind of deal with it and push through it and whatever. But I think you're right. I think that happens all the time, and part of that is just like how much money is on the line when you get to a certain level. It's like, especially if you don't come from anything, it's like by the time you start talking six figures, it's like you're gonna have to fucking hit me in the head with a 2x4 to.
Plus, you got to be different to be a boxer anyway, right? Like, you got to be halfway crazy to be a legitimate boxer as it is, because who signs up to get their ass beat? You know what I'm saying? Every day. Like, it's not just the event, but you're going into a gym for training every day, fighting other guys bigger, smaller than you. You know, I'm a fan, love the sport, but put me in there, yeah, nah, man. The first time a dude chin checks me, I'm like, hold on, wait a minute, time out.
Yeah, there's a reason I like the sport so much from over there.
Right. I love watching it now.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can put my Pepsi on the screen. I don't want nobody, getting that.
Don't worry about that, bro. There's like 19 people watching. We're trying to get that number up, but I don't think Pepsi is supervising the podcast.
Funny thing about that, you were just talking about Corey Spinks, right? I love that dude. Like, of all the Spinkses, he's my favorite. You know what I'm saying? Like, the heavyweights and, his uncle, his dad, they're great. But I loved watching him fight. Like, I know a lot of people are here or there on him, but I watched those Zab fights. I was watching him before he got the belts, man. And I love his style of boxing. I loved everything about Corey Spinks. And he wasn't one of these dudes, even after he took some L's, where he was like, oh, woe is me. He didn't do he was like, I'm going to be back. And he came back, and he was, I don't know if he was better, but it was almost like you felt in his corner. Like, if you were watching him, you're like, I want this dude to win. Like, every time he fought. You know what I mean? And I love that about Corey Spinks, bro. He's one of my favorite.
Fucking great hand speed too, great footwork, just like great overall boxing skills. Fought a lot of the guys of his era. I think that's like another thing, right, with the current state of boxing, where the O is so important. It's like a lot of these guys really, I mean, they did get better from losing, because it was like, I don't ever want to experience that again. I don't want to ever feel that again. So you learn from that experience. And we were talking about it on the ITR show last night. It's just like, why are there so many guys in the top 20 at welterweight who are undefeated? And is that really serving them? You know what I mean? Like, is that making you better as a fighter? That you know what I'm saying?
It's trash, bro. Like,
But we
and
as fans, I think, contribute to that too, because not us specific, but the fans
yeah,
contribute to that when a guy loses and our like reactionary internet culture just goes, "Nah, he's fucking trash. I told you he sucked the whole time."
yeah. I mean, and it like I was saying, nowadays, look at I'm from Chicago, and I forgot to mention Kenny Sims. You know what I'm saying? He's got a couple L's. I forgot about him, right? So I'm guilty of it now myself. But when we were coming up, our favorite boxers had like 3, 4, 5 losses, right? But it wasn't the fact that they had losses; it was who they lost to, how they lost. You know what I'm saying? Like Muhammad Ali had what 6 losses when his career was over, but he lost to the top guys in the sport. Like
Dude,
Muhammad
Pacquiao,
Ali,
Pacquiao,
yeah,
Pacquiao's 9 or 8 losses on his record. And when you look at them in context and then how he would follow a loss up, it's like that's what makes it more impressive is that he fucking beats Keith Thurman after he gets knocked out by Marquez and loses to Floyd. You know what I'm
right.
saying? Like that's he fucking stayed relevant and then beat the best welterweight of the moment. You know what I mean?
It's why people love the Rocky movies, right? You don't watch Rocky because he's gonna win every time. You watch it because this dude's gonna put his heart, soul, everything into winning, right? And he never gives up. Win, lose, or draw, you don't want to fight him twice either. You know what I'm saying? Like that's one thing about I think, you know, all the trilogies that Pacquiao has, those dudes were crazy as hell too. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and he's had trilogies with legends, like not, not your up
Multiple,
and coming guys,
multiple.
right?
Of multiple, you know what I'm saying? But dude, from Barrera, 2 with Barrera, but Morales 3 times, Marquez 4 times. There's multiple series in his career that are legend. To Tim Bradley 3 times.
And those Marquez fights, like, there's not one of those 4 where you're not entertained. Like, there's not a dull moment in any of those 4 fights. Like I could watch them now knowing the outcomes and still be like on the edge of my seat watching them because of how exciting they were.
I've been thinking about how silly that would be now in the modern market, right? Because Manny Pacquiao kind of broke America in like the early 2000s, right? Like 2000, 2001.
Yeah.
He already had losses on his record. But in today's
Mm-hmm.
boxing world, would he even get that opportunity, or would people see the 2 on the end and go, I think I'm good.
I
I had this one dude that's 30-0 that's fought 12 Muppets.
I think that's a good question. I think he would have to beat somebody of note. Like he'd have to get a fight with somebody who is either undefeated or coming up before people would kind of give him a shot. I think in the boxing world, he'd get a shot, but I think the fans would kind of like, who's this bum? Even with 2 or 3 losses, you know what I mean? But you're right. Like you look at guys now, they take a L, 1 or 2 losses, and people are talking about their next fight being a career defining fight. And I'm like, wait a minute. he lost to the champ. Like, why are we
It
talking about
wasn't
his career being
right.
over?
It wasn't even that long ago that Amir Khan could get knocked out twice in a year and still be like a prospect.
Right. Because why is that? Because yes, he had no chin, but he had knockout power in both hands, right? And when he was in his prime, he was a slick boxer. So,
And he had
you
balls.
right. No, nobody when he fought Canelo, nobody wanted that Canelo smoke. Nobody in his division, nobody north of him. And this dude steps up. I don't think he gets a lot of credit for that or as much as he should. Amir Khan was like, fuck it, I'll do it. You know, we all knew what the assignment was. It was some kamikaze shit, but he did it. And I respected him. Like I respected him more then than I did any of those other fights. I was like, oh, okay, cool. I can fuck with that. Because you daring to be great, okay.
Right,
Like
exactly.
like Canelo losing to Bivol, I'm not mad at Canelo for that. You know, he's daring to be great.
If he went up and fought Usyk and lost, which he probably would have, right? If we're being realistic, would people have that same reaction? Would they still be like, I knew it? But that's what it is. People on the internet just want to be able to go, I knew it. I knew he was trash.
Yeah. It's the what we were talking about it before. It's the Floyd Mayweather effect, right? People were watching him as much to see him lose, probably more so than to see him win, right? But he never lost. If Floyd would have gone up and fought like Triple G when everybody was saying, "Oh, we'll fight him and we'll see how good you really are," if he'd have stepped up and did that, which would have been crazy, you know what I mean, and lost, everybody would like, "See, aha, I told you." Like, really?
Told you it wasn't all that, right?
Right. But yeah, no, he's still all that. He just took a risk.
I also think he did lose. He just got some good decisions. And I think even though if I look at, he's technically 50-0, but in my mind, if he's 48-2, like there's still an argument that he's the best fighter of all time. You know what I mean? But I think that was so specifically a part of his marketing. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is how I'm selling myself and selling the fight, is like whether or not you agree with it. I have this and I'm going to keep it. I'm going to talk shit. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know. I don't know why that stuck so hard when he was really like the only guy to ever do that. You know what I mean? Like the vast majority of contenders throughout all of boxing history lost on the way up. If be it Hopkins, like Donaire, fucking Winky Wright, that like any top guy of eras prior, they all lost coming up.
Bro, you look at. It's funny you were talking about Winky Wright. You mentioned him. I was having a conversation privately where we were just talking about the most avoided boxers, and in recent history, Winky Wright's at the top of that list, no matter who's making the list, right? I think top 3 easy, top 5 if you're being picky, but Winky Wright would, even with 2 or 3 losses, right? Even at the end of his career, dudes didn't want to fight Winky Wright. You know what I mean? Because it's like, hey, that's a hard out. I'm not 100% sure I can beat him, and if I lose, then it's
But in the modern market, is it, does he even get another shot after the Vargas fight?
No, and not a major one.
And that's the best of him came after that.
Yeah, I think in today's world he becomes a gatekeeper after that, which would be horrible. You know what I mean? Because you never see what's going to happen after that. What I'll say this though, I like what the dudes at 154 and 160 were doing for a while. They were all fighting each other, right? Recently with the Jared Hurds and all the Charlos and all. Charlo's a good point to make here, right? He's got a L, and a lot of people were like, "Oh, see, told you." See, we were just talking about. See, he's not all that great. He took an L to a guy who would beat probably any other person in the division, right? And then he comes back, he beats him, and then he draws with a guy that, again, another great fighter, comes back and says, "Okay, cool." He fixes what was wrong, and comes back.
And I would say pretty confidently that he's a more complete fighter than his brother by like quite a bit, because he's had to change his shit up and he's had to make revisions and he's had to go take notes like, okay, why did this happen in this fight? It's, if he's looking at that Tony Harrison fight, there's plenty to learn, and he did learn it. You know what I'm saying? The same deal with the Castano fight. I didn't think he would win that rematch, but he fucking took those notes and did what he had to do,
And you have to respect that, right? You have to respect the guy who either took an L or a fight didn't go the way he really wanted to. He gets to run it back, and you see the changes. You see the fix, right? Look at our biggest pay-per-view draw right now is Canelo, right? Look at him before Floyd and since Floyd. Like, you saw how much he had no defense before he fought Floyd, right? His defense became almost, I was like, yo, how the fuck did that happen? You know what I mean? Usually, especially with Mexican boxers, usually there's no thought of that shit. He switched his shit up, greatly. and he became a better fighter. You look at Charlo, he was I thought he was a little overrated, for my taste, right? I was like, I don't know.
I think he
When he
still is, but he makes it happen.
well, I'll say his brother is. I still think his brother is, because his brother hasn't been tested really, or he hasn't had to take that. I wouldn't say an L. He doesn't necessarily need to do that, but he hasn't fought anybody where I'm like, okay. But when his brother comes back, and he's made these changes, and you see there was no excuses. I came back to the lab, fixed it, and knocked this dude out. I'm with it. You know what I mean? Like,
For
give
real.
me a dude who can take a L, come back, and because that's what boxing is, bro. Like,
And also
I
Jamal doesn't do that, because I remember when he fought Derevyanchenko, he was getting hit a lot, but he wins comfortably. And so he doesn't go and take those notes. And then he fought some guy that whoever his last fight was, somebody nobody knows. And he was getting hit a lot again. And it was just like clearly him not being forced to learn those lessons, because that's what losing and shit does.
and I thought he was, he was losing in my mind, those fights. Like, I was like, he's not, because he wasn't doing enough, for my money. It's like the Ruiz and Ortiz fight. I was watching that, and I'm
Complacency.
like,
It's complacency.
yeah, like, you see Ruiz, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, whenever you're throwing your hands, you're hurting Ortiz, but he's just standing there taking pictures all fight, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, that's a
And
great
it's
segue, actually. So, how did you overall feel about, or I guess continue to elaborate on how you felt about Andy's performance?
I thought it was trash, but it was good enough to get him another fight, another big fight, right? I don't. After the fight, they said, he was talking about, he wanted to go rounds. He didn't want the fight to be over quickly. He wanted to go rounds because he needed, that work after the layoff and all this other stuff. And I said, I don't know about that, bro. I think you were just as scared of Ortiz's power as he was of your, or should have been of yours. But you you were in there taking pictures, man. Like, that you had the dude hurt. There were a couple of occasions I thought he could have got him out of there, or and I'm an Ortiz fan, but he's past his time. I think he's long in the tooth, and I think it's, he's got maybe one or two fights on him before I'd like to see him hang it up. But he was in there taking pictures, bro. I didn't think he was acting like a champ, right? You're the former unified champ, first Mexican to do that. Act like it. You know what I mean? Go in there and get this dude out. You got somebody hurt, knocked him down 3 times. Like, if other than those 3 knockdowns, it was one of the most boring heavyweight fights I've ever seen.
He doesn't look like he feels obligated to make a statement.
And he does. He needs to make a statement, because he blew the pooch with the Anthony Joshua fights. Like, that second Anthony Joshua fight, and I've told people this privately as well, is if Andy Ruiz trained his ass off for that Anthony Joshua fight, I think he beats him again. You know what I mean? Like, if you go back and you watch that fight, even as out of shape as he was, I was like, he still has an opportunity to beat this guy, right? But he got too full of himself. It happens. You know what I mean? But to your point, right? How do you come back, right? And it didn't look that great in his comeback. I want to see somebody who looks angry that he lost
I
his
thought he looked
belt.
good in the Areola fight.
I thought he looked good, but Areola tested that chin. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but Chris is a hell of a fighter, and he got dropped and he got up. I thought he was more active against Areola. His weight was lower. I think he did way more weighting against Ortiz, and I think weighting in boxing, that comes from conditioning, because it's physical and it's mental conditioning, right? Because if you don't have the physical stamina, there's no way to like actually execute a game plan. You know what I'm saying? So when I
Yeah.
hear, oh, I needed to get rounds in and da 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 da, like, I'm saying this as one, that's fat kid talk, bro. Like, you know what I'm saying? That's fat kid talk. Like,
Yeah.
you didn't need rounds. You didn't have the engine to push yourself once you had him hurt.
And if I'm being like super picky and technical, which I hate to do on certain boxes because I'm round myself, right? But his footwork look off.
You're not making
You
millions either, so you get to critique him.
right. His footwork looked off. He didn't look like your typical Andy Ruiz knight, right? Like he's like to your point, he's usually a lot more active. Um, and I didn't see somebody who looked like they were there to win. I think there was, he's just there to get a check. Plus, this is a pay-per-view main event, bro. Like if you're pay-per-view, I want to see a pay-per-view fight. This looked like this could have been an undercard, should have been the undercard. Like there were 2 or 3 fights on the undercard I would have preferred to be the main event. Like
This
at
would
least
be
those
a
guys were fighting
great
like it.
co-main on. This would be a great co-main on the Canelo Golovkin.
Yeah.
The kind of fight it is and looked like.
I don't think either one of those guys, Ruiz or Ortiz, needs to be a pay-per-view main event ever. Like ever. It blew my mind that it was. I was like, yo, they could have put this on ESPN Plus or like, Fox Sports or something and, probably got more views, to be honest with you. I don't know. But
Showtime main event. Easily.
yeah. My question to you is, do you see Ruiz based off of what you've seen these last 2 fights since Joshua Ariola and Ortiz? Do you see him beating any of the top guys in the division?
Probably not, but he's got sneaky shit that, you know what I'm saying? Like there is a reason for all his flaws and his not like lack of discipline. He's got weird timing. He's got sneaky power. I think he's got little bricks in those hands. And I don't know. I think it's possible. I think there's a possibility that if Deontay is not the same guy that he was before the Fury fights, that Andy does enough awkward shit and still moves his head and gets off the center. I do think he could catch Deontay with some weird shit and make him uncomfortable.
I thought about that after you came on the Sounds About Right podcast because you brought up yeah, Deontay's knocking people out, but those 2 losses, the last 2 losses to Fury were they were hell, right?
Beat down.
And yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see what he looks like, right? In my head, I'm still going, yeah, but hold on, wait a minute, bro. 41 other dudes, but you're right. The especially the second fight with Fury, that shit was, I mean, that was like, I felt like they should have charged Fury with something after that fight. And then the second one, that knockout at the end, it
That's
was
what I'm
crazy.
saying, bro. You don't think Andy can hurt Wilder? Andy can hurt Wilder, bro.
I don't know if he gets close enough, man, to be honest with you. I think his defense isn't good enough to stop Wilder's punches coming in. So like if he fights like he did against Ortiz, I think it's an early night. Like I think Wilder finds him early, and that prevents him from getting in there to mix it up.
I think the best version of Andy can land that, right? But that's what's disappointing about Andy is that he has all of these things that not a lot of people have. He has great punching power. He has great hand speed. He's got good feet. He's mobile. The couple of times that he's been fit, right? Like he's got heart. He gets dropped and he gets up. Like there's a lot of things to like about Andy, but he doesn't give himself the best opportunity. And I think that's the main reason he'll lose to all these guys, not because of his talent.
I think to your point, yeah, we need to see where Wilder is at. Like when he gets in there with Helenia, so I'd like to see where he's at. Joshua, I mean, I think he could beat Joshua. I said that, I thought he could have still won the second fight with him. Usyk, I think he gets taken to school. I think he has no chance against Fury.
Joe Joyce would probably beat him up too, honestly.
Yeah, because Joe Joyce can take a punch. You know what I mean? I still think Dubois has a good career ahead of him.
Yep.
I think it'd be a 50-50 fight with him and Dubois. Parker, I think, if they had a rematch, I think, Ruiz got a chance to beat him. I thought he won the first fight in my opinion, but
he was like 30 pounds lighter back then too, bro. Like that's the thing is even against Parker, and then I think against Areola there was another fight. Like he's had fights where he's in the 240, 250 range, and it's a different guy.
Yeah, I think the best version of him was the Parker version, right? Like even though he lost that fight, when you look at what he was capable of, you know what I mean? It's the reason they gave him the fight, with Anthony Joshua in the first place, is because they didn't expect, what happened to happen, but they were like, hey, this is a guy who can really fight. He's not a tomato can. People will respect it. We can get past him and move on. Well, the problem with that is Anthony Joshua doesn't like fighting actual boxers. He likes, guys who'll stand still and just throw punches with him. But I think Andy Ruiz has a chance to get back into it, but he has to really be 10 toes down, right? Like it can't be none of this.
I don't think he has that.
You don't think so? Not anymore?
I don't know if he ever had it, bro. He's 35, right? At a certain point, you are what you are. And I just don't. He's trainer hopped, for the entire time that I've followed his career. He's never had the same guy in his corner.
Yeah.
I just don't think he's that guy, as much as it would be fun if he was. Because even when you go back to the first Joshua fight, right? Once you're removed from the shock of the moment, like he drops Joshua twice in that round and then just waits for like 4 rounds, dude. You know what I'm saying? Like he just kind of looked at him for a long time, and Joshua didn't have anything left. So the minute Andy landed something again, he had him.
It was over.
But there was a real killer next round.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. With the Ortiz fight, that fight should have been over in 5 rounds tops. You know what I mean? And that's saying something, because Ortiz, even though he's long in the tooth, he has a chin, he has heart. So the fact that he was, dominating that fight the way he was, especially early, like you said, if he had that killer instinct, that fight would not have gone to a decision. I don't think anybody expected it to. Like either way, no matter who you had winning before it started, I thought that fight was ending early. You know what I mean? So I don't know, man. Like I
think about this, right? You exclude the rounds where Andy got knockdowns. I think I scored at 6-4 for Ortiz.
Yeah.
And I think you could have done it 7-3. Like I think arguably Ortiz won as many, if not more, rounds in that fight. You know what I mean?
I think I had not a draw, but I think I had him winning by like, you know what I'm saying? Like because I was like, okay, literally, if you take the rounds where there were knockdowns out, I thought he won every other round. You know what I mean? Like I didn't give Ruiz. I think what got him the win was he won like 1 or 2 of those throwaway rounds on the judges' scorecards, right? And I think it was they were giving it to him just because they thought he was going to win anyway. But I was like, but even if if you look at the scorecards, right, he lost the fight in rounds. He won the fight because of those knockdowns. Like that. That's
exclusively
the only reason.
Because of them. Yeah, exclusively. It would have been a draw.
Like what was one of them was like 114 or 113 or some shit like that.
113, 112.
Or 113, 112. Let's be clear, bro. If you don't get those 2 knockdowns, and you probably got a gimme round in there by one of the judges, right? You don't get that gimme round in there, this is a draw. That's how ridiculous is that? You have 3 knockdowns in a fight and you barely win. Like, come on, bro. Like there's no other top guy. Like now, if we're talking about it, if Joshua has somebody down 3 times, he's winning that fight. Clearly. Yep. It's clear. Usyk, Wilder, Fury, Dubois, Joyce, Parker, all those guys, the fight's over because they've all got that dogging him, right? Now we're going in and we're saying, yo, you're saying you're one of those guys, but you barely want to fight. You knocked the guy down 3 times in.
An interesting comparison I had in my head. Do you remember Vladimir Klitschko versus Sam Peter?
Yeah, yeah, I
So,
remember those fights.
so the difference, right, in that was Peter would put Klitschko down, but he would hop back up, and then he was boxing beautifully. It wasn't like Ortiz was hitting him with that jab, pop, pop, like right when he got up. It wasn't like that. There wasn't as much resistance. So it was like there was definitely more opportunity for Ruiz than there was for Sam Peter. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
By a lot.
it Ortiz looked like he was ready to go. You know what I mean? Like when he got back up, he was kind of like, okay, let me just kind of hopefully make it through these rounds. And you expected, you know, Ruiz to jump on him, and it didn't happen, bro. Like you said, there was nothing there was no resistance, but there was no, there was nothing happening on Ruiz's end. It's like, come on, bro. Like, what are you doing? He's basically waiting for you to jump on him. you know,
Right. Or
he's giving you the win.
He's trying to wait you out. You know what I'm saying? And if a guy's trying to wait you out, that's the moment you press him. And it doesn't mean he's not dangerous. It doesn't mean going with your chin up in the fucking air. But that's the moment you kind of have to press. This is an interesting question I thought of, but do you think if boxing, politics, or whatever had been different and maybe he got bigger fights younger, do you think Luis Ortiz could have been a bigger name, like a better career?
No doubt. I think it's he's one of those. That's a problem you see with a lot of these Cuban fighters, right? No matter what weight class they are, they turn pros in their 30s. Like, I hate that because they could be doing so much more, right? Like if they defected, a lot of them would have defected earlier. I think, we'd have some beautiful careers. I think if Luis Ortiz had been, if he had done what he did in his 20s as opposed to his 30s, we'd be talking about him having multiple championships, if not, retired as a champ, because his skill set, right? You look at it, he had everything you wanted. He could box the shit out of you, right? He had a hell of a chin, heart, and he had knockout power again in both hands, like which.
And he had footwork, bro. You remember when he fought fucking Brian Jennings? I mean, his footwork was amazing.
It was masterful. He
looked like Larry Holmes.
He could put a master class on in boxing. You know what I mean? If you for a heavyweight fighter, it was like, wow, great. You know what I mean? But then he, that cliff came fast and hard.
But I don't even know. I don't think that part has as much to do with age, right? There was 4 or 5 years in there where dudes just straight up avoided him. There was no like what's it called? There was no benefit in going out of your way.
I think Wilder was the first big name. Wilder was like the first guy to, hey, come on.
Right. But imagine him and Tyson Fury at the time where Fury beat Klitschko and Ortiz beat Brian Jennings. I
don't know that either one, but that'd have been a hell of a fight, though.
That's what I'm saying. Because the thing is, I'm not necessarily against, and obviously Cuban boxing is a different thing, right? Because it's difficult for those guys to leave. But I don't have a problem with staying amateur for a long time if when you hit the pro level, there's a fast track, right? You're not waiting and waiting and wait. You don't have time to wait if that's the decision you've made. So if you're going to go pro after 30, it's got to be quick.
It's like look at Lomachenko, right? He had his first title fight, like what, 3-4 fights in, against Orlando Salido. You know what I mean?
Second fight, bro. Second.
Yeah. So and nobody had a problem with it because, I mean, what Lomachenko, I don't even think he has 20 fights yet. What is he, like 15 fights into his career?
I think he's 17-2.
Yeah. But he's done so much in those fights. You know what I mean? If we feel like he's been fighting a lot longer, you know what I mean? It feels like he's had this long, illustrious pro career. And it's like, yeah, dude's got 19 fights. You know what I mean?
And another perfect example is Joe Joyce. I think Joe's obviously 36 or whatever, but he's getting the fight with Joseph Parker right now. while he's still basically in his prime. But if you wait another 4 years, that fight may not be as significant. He may have a tough fight with a lesser name. There's shit that happens. There could be injuries. There could be whatever, but he's doing it right now. I never felt like Luis got that opportunity.
I think guys in the heavyweight level, right, when it comes to being rushed along, no matter how great their amateur career was, I think nobody wants to be Audley Harrison, right? Like, he's a guy who spent years in the amateurs. Then he comes out and they hit him with the fast track, right? And then you saw how that played out, right? Because you thought, oh, this dude's the next best thing since sliced bread. He comes in and it's like, he's still got some things to learn and he has no chin. You know what I mean? Which in the amateurs, especially back then, because they were still using the headgear, your chin doesn't get tested as much in the amateurs as it does the pros, obviously, right? So, you come in, you're a heavyweight, you got all this pub, and then boom, you're done. You know what I mean? And Harrison ended up being an opponent pretty much his entire career. I think guys are afraid of that happening, right? But when you have some of these elite guys, right, as far as talent goes, I think it's okay to throw them in a little bit early. Not, right out the bat at heavyweight, I don't think. But at the smaller weight classes, yeah, I think you can do it. Like, I would say pretty much 154 and down, these guys can start fighting for world titles 5 fights into their career if they wanted to. At the heavyweight, I think you do kind of have to build up that tolerance, for taking those big boy punches to the dome, before you get in with those killers. Because let's face it, even guys on the lower half, that lower 10, right, in the heavyweight division, those are some killers. Like these guys are heavy handed, and they're not. And there's no bitch in the top 10, really top 20 in the division. There are guys that are beatable, right, but they're all dogs. So I think you do have to take that into consideration. Is if you're a heavyweight, yeah, you want to take a few years, not too long though. To your point, you don't want to wait 5, 6, 7, 10 years, but you do want to take some time to build that up.
Yeah, it's one or the other, right? You either are doing that build up in the amateurs or you're doing it in the pros. So if you've chosen to do it in the amateurs,
look at Wilder, right? Like, he didn't have a long amateur career. Yeah, he went to the Olympics, but before the Olympics, how many amateur fights did he have? Like a handful of them,
right?
You know what I'm saying? And people were mad because they were like, why is he taking so long? Why is he, fighting all these tomato cans? Why is he, coming? It's because he needs to, right? Like,
yeah.
And had he done what everybody wanted him to do and start fighting those dogs early on in his career, would we have the Deontay Wilder we have today? Probably not. He probably takes a couple L's early on in his career if he's listening to everybody else.
But this is my counter to that. Would that have been a bad thing? I think he might have learned something. I think he would have been a better boxer.
I think for him it would have. I think for us it'd have been great. You know what I mean? But I think for him, because he needs that confidence, right? I think it would have hurt his confidence way more early on. Like losing twice to Tyson Fury, right? There's no shame in that, no matter how you lose, right? It's like if you'd have lost to Floyd Mayweather or Mike Tyson back in the day, yeah, okay. If you lost to Lennox Lewis, nobody's really giving you shit for that, right? But if you lose to, Arthur Spilka, early in your career, well, we're going to give you shit for that, right? And I think for Wilder, I think he needed to do exactly what he needed to do, because I think if he'd have took one or two L's early on, I don't think he would have been able to come back like, maybe one of the Charlos or, these other guys. I think he needed to get to the point where he did lose to one, arguably one of the best heavyweights of all time. So now he can have that confidence to come back, and I'm looking forward to the comeback, but I think that he still needs to learn and make some adjustments Like you can't just come back winging that right hand, you know, because now we have a blueprint now, right? Like now people have a blueprint for how to beat you.
They do, but it's not really going to work unless you're a master boxer. So I feel like now that he's this far in, it's like all he's got is winding up the right hand. That's the move. Like he tried to jab and box for 90 seconds in the last fight against Fury. It was a minute and a half.
But it was working. But it was working.
Yeah, but it was 1 minute and a half. 1.5 minutes. He did that.
But when he, so there were, and I did, because I went back and I watched it after you.
I'm
you
just making the
that,
point because I've trained guys. If you take somebody's nature away from them, you got to do it early. You got, if you're going to show them something that's not in their bones, you got to do it early, because once they build habits, now you're taking away from what's working. You know what I'm saying?
I think that was the biggest detriment in his career, right? Is that I think everybody was afraid to do what his trainer did in the second fight, is do something against what he wanted to do, because they thought he'd have been out of there, right? I think somebody need to somebody need to have taken over and been like, yo, no, stop throwing the right hand, bro. Like we got to learn other shit. The right hand's going to be there. Your power is what it is. Like you can't teach power. Either you have it or you don't. You know what I mean? You can get better at it. You can, but that right hand that's from God. You know what I mean? Like you can't. No, there's nothing else.
He could have been molded into like a Sergey Kovalev. He could have been, if he had been, I think, shown some things earlier on, and maybe him and whoever was around him wasn't so overly infatuated with his power. He probably could have developed another layer. But I think now at this point, if you try to develop that, you're going to take away from, because you could see the reason he only boxed for 90 seconds like that is because it's not natural for his body. And he might be able to do it in sparring, and he might be able to do it against guys that aren't Tyson Fury. But against the best of the best, you got to do that for 48 minutes. And
now imagine how dangerous he'd have been if he had those tools, early on in his career, right? Like he's already dangerous because he has that one trick. It just so happens to be one of the best tricks we've ever seen. You know what I mean? But imagine if he had all those tools, when he was coming up, and he, when he was 20-0, if he had that when he was 20-0, as opposed to 42, you know what I mean? And two, I think he wins those Fury fights, right? Easily. You know what I mean? Bro, that first Fury fight, let's be real clear. I don't think there's any other heavyweight that gets up from that two-piece that Fury caught late in that first fight.
I agree.
Because I thought it was over. I was like, oh, yeah, there's no way. He hit you with the Sunday punch and then followed it up. Oh, bro. I said, nah, this is a wrap. The fact that Fury stood up, I don't give a fuck how long the count was. The fact that he got up at all was
with his eyes open. Yeah, with his eyes straight.
Right. Without assistance. Like, you know what I mean? Where's the medical cart? Like, that's what I was expecting after that. But you saw what happened with Wilder. Like, afterwards, he was like, really? Like, he got super deflated. You know what I mean? He's like, shit. Like, if I can't knock him out with that, I'm done, because that's all he's got.
Yeah. And just an overall, just overly reliant on power. What is your take on what Tyson Fury is doing? What's he doing, bro?
I think oddly enough,
is he losing his mind? Is he a marketing genius? Is he just like a shithead? What's he doing?
All of the above. and here's the thing, right? Oddly enough, because it's Tyson Fury, I love it. If anybody else was doing this shit, I'd turn the channel. I'd be like, yo, get this fuck out of here.
Yeah, he's getting a lot of tolerance, bro. I mean, even if Floyd was trying to do shit like this, he would be getting fucking toasted.
Anybody. I mean, like I said, if we were anybody other than Tyson Fury, we'd all be like, man, get this the fuck out of here, right? But because it's Tyson Fury, we kind of go, all right, and he gets a pass. Some guys get it, some, most of them don't. But it is tiresome. Like, I'm like, okay, bro, we knew you were coming back before you came back. You know, this whole talk of retirement, I thought it was trash. I thought he was going to fight again anyway. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
I don't know. I didn't know what to think. He's been in and out of my pound for pound list. He said he was coming back to fight Chisora. I had him on it for 3 days, and then he said he wasn't, so I had to take him off. And I don't know. I truly, truly don't understand what he's doing. I don't think it's good. I don't think it's good for the sport. And I don't think it's good for his legacy. Like, how is that how a champion behaves if he fights Joshua next and not Usyk? That's not
He,
championship
he
behavior.
he's a gypsy, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, some days he does want to do it, some days he doesn't.
But you get what I'm saying? Like, as great
Yeah.
of a fighter as he is, that will hurt his legacy if he avoids Usyk and goes just for the check to fight Joshua. Because I'm not interested in it. I think most hardcore fans are not going to be interested in that fight in the same way.
I think he would be fighting Usyk next if Usyk would be fighting at the end of this year. I think Usyk is the one who said, "Hey, I'm not fighting again until next year." So,
You saw the
you know,
quote video, bro, where Fury is like, "I know you lost twice in a row, but if you want to fight, I'll fight you, AJ." And it's just like,
yeah,
why? Why
I
do
think
you deserve that?
I think in the UK that's still a huge fight, right?
Of
For
course,
us
of course. If
here,
he fought Lennox Lewis right now, it would be a big fight.
I think it's like, okay, he couldn't get Usyk because Usyk says, "Hey, I'm not fighting again until next year." I think he wants to fight right now. You know what I'm saying? I think for Fury, I think it's, if I don't fight right now, I'm probably not gonna fight. You know what I'm saying? So who's the next best thing to Usyk? Yeah, Joshua just lost, but name another guy he could fight right now, not named Deontay Wilder, where he's gonna make that much money. You know what I mean? Or the money he wants. It's Joshua. Like, that's pretty much it. Like, he's got to fight Joshua, and then if he beats Joshua, which we all think he will easily, right? Then he gets Usyk. That, and I think it's even bigger fight with Usyk. You know what I mean? Because it's like, okay, well, these are obviously the two best guys. Like, this is it
They're already obviously the two best guys, though.
for
The,
you and me, and then
but
the ITR guy.
The Joshua fight would be just a check. There's no if you take the capitalism out of it and you just look at it as boxing, there's no reason for that fight to happen right now.
Bro, it's prize fighting, bro. Like,
For
I
sure,
can't.
100%, 100%. I,
I
I
I don't like it, but I'm not mad at it either. Like, okay, you know what I mean? Because I'll be honest with you, bro. If I was Tyson Fury, that's the way I'd be looking at it. Okay, I want Usyk. He's saying he's not going to fight till next year, and you have to give him that, right? Because there's not only has he earned it as champ, but let's not forget the Ukraine is still going through a war. You know
yep.
what I mean? And he was actively involved with that. He might be getting back actively involved, as a lot of boxers are, right, that are from there, no matter what their status is. So you kind of have to give him that. If I'm Fury and I want to come back right now, I'm saying, okay, who else am I going to fight? Nobody wants to see me fight Wilder a fourth time, right? He's already tied up with Canadians.
My personal take is that the winner of Joyce and Parker would be way more like a legit challenge if you're going just pure boxing talk. That's the fight. It's not Joshua.
So let's say Joyce beats Parker, right? Joyce has got what, 12 fights? You know what I mean? This will be number 13, I think, right? If he beats Parker, people are going to be like, okay, you beat a dude who got 13 fights. I'm not saying us, but I'm talking, the general public is like, okay, you beat a guy who's got, not even 20 fights on his ledger. He's not in your realm or whatever, right? He's looking at it that way. Plus, what's
But
the biggest money fight?
beating Parker, it puts you in a different category.
Parker, yes. Joyce, no. I think if Joyce beats Parker, which I think he will, right? Joyce fighting, Fury at this point in his career, I don't think it does enough for either one of them, right? Like, if Joyce wins, obviously that's a huge, pump up for him. But losing to Tyson Fury now, what do you really learn? You're still, I think he needs to get a couple more guys before he starts challenging the dudes, at heavyweight. But for Fury, it does nothing for him. You know what I mean? If he wins, what does that really prove? You know what I mean? We thought he should have won that fight anyway. Yes, it doesn't really prove anything with Joshua because we all know he can beat Anthony Joshua. We thought that years ago.
I think it proves more than fighting Joshua right now. I do. I think that it proves that at any given moment, even if I've been off for a bit or whatever, I can step in with a top 5 guy and I can take him to school. And can Joshua say that? You know what I'm saying? I think it does a whole lot more for his career than fighting a guy who, no disrespect, because it's against one of the best guys in the world, but just lost twice in a row and not really, they were close, but not really.
But people want to see it, especially in the UK. People they could sell out stadiums for that fight. Are you going to sell out a stadium for Joyce or Parker? I don't think so. In my opinion, you know what I mean? I'd love it. I'd be like, oh yeah, and I'd sign me up every day of the week, twice on Sunday for that. But am I going to be interested enough as a boxing fan for Anthony Joshua and Fury? Not as much as I would for one of those other guys, right? But am I going to tune in? Would I pay money to watch it? You're damn right. It is what it is. I think it, and to your point, and it might not be the best reason, but yeah, it's money, bro. Like they're taking the money, and I can't be mad at them for taking it.
I'm not mad at that part of it on like an individual basis, but I think, not to get like too meta, but I think that general line of thinking is part of why boxing is so stale right now.
I think it is if you haven't gotten there yet. So you look at, the Spence and Crawford situation, right? Stop. Just fucking fight each other. Another thing I hate is these promotional deals and in these, the network deals, right? Because they hang up so many fights. One guy's with his own, another guy's with Showtime. When HBO was in it, that was a big hang up. PBC, you've got all these, and then you throw the promoters in on top of it. This guy's with that guy, this guy's with this guy. None of these fights are getting fucking made. And the fucked up thing is the fighters want to fight, but they've got to jump through 5 different guys to say okay before they get there. You know what I mean? I hate that shit. I think that Spence and Crawford just need to fight, get it the fuck over with. The problem I have with guys that haven't done it yet, right? Errol Spence and Bud Crawford, neither one of them have, they're great talents, but you haven't beat the other guy yet. You know what I mean? You haven't beat another guy yet. Fury, you can give him some leeway. He beat the guy. He beat Wilder. If Wilder had beat him, we'd have said the same thing. We'd give him that space, right? If you're a Floyd Mayweather, you get that space. A Canelo, you get that space because you've beaten the guys. These guys haven't done that yet, but they're acting like they have. You know what I mean?
Right.
Well, and that's what pisses me off.
The vast majority of fighters have not done that. They haven't done what Canelo has done. And I think it's getting less and less common the more the O is protected and the more kind of subdivided the promotion is and everything. And I think it was one of the shows the other day, but we were talking about this. Like boxing for me has gotten to be like a store that's like mid-loot. Like everyone just like, let me go into the store and get as much as I can get and then get the fuck out as soon as possible. And I get that because it's a dangerous sport that there has to be some of that mentality, right? Where it's like, I'm getting smacked upside the head. I need to maximize, what I'm getting out of this. But I think there also comes a point where the health of the sport and the ability for everybody to have those opportunities and to give the fans, more of what they want, almost every fight we see now is A side, B side. Even if it's like a decent matchup, we basically know what's going to happen,
Let me ask you this. Do you think that it's kind of off topic, but it is on topic. do you think that the multiple champions in each division that have been created now has anything to do with that, or as much to do with it as like the promoters and the boxers avoiding each other? Because now, what is it?
Yeah.
I think each organization has like 4 guys in each weight class with a belt. So, do you think that weighs into it as much now? Because now, you could be the WBA regular interim special champion, you know,
Yeah.
and now you're getting more money because you've got a strap that means absolutely nothing, but it means more dollars essentially.
It doesn't, right? Because you have to pay the sanctioning fees for every time you defend it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like all these guys have to pay money to just to hang on to these things. And I think like it just makes it more confusing for new fans. If you're not, we're so used to this concept that we don't see how fucking weird it is. But if you've never watched boxing before and you're interested in it, and you go, who's the best guy? I can't answer that. I can give you my opinion, but there's no
Right.
consensus structure
But
that,
back in the
you
day,
know,
there used to be the guy,
and I
like
think that that helps the sport a lot.
I think one, and I know it's never going to happen, but I'd like for you take those 4 majors, right? The IBF, WBO, BC, and WBA. You consolidate them into one fucking organization and say, look, this is the guy. And then you might have, I think the ring championship still means a lot. The lineal championship still means a lot to a lot of people. I know it does. Tyson Fury, purists like myself, I grew up with that. Like, I remember that belt meant
Really,
more
the
to
only
me
one
back
that
then.
matters in a sense. It's really the
Right.
only one.
So you leave those two, right? You leave one sanctioning body, you leave the ring belt, and say, okay, those 2 guys are it. Like that's it. I think it would clear up a lot. I think that's the one model that, if you watch MMA, UFC's got it right, where they make everybody fight each other. You know what I'm saying? It's not like, hey, I'm the champ, so now I get to avoid, these other guys, or I get to take some soft touches. Nah, you became the champ. That's cool. The guy, that's a monster, that's number one now, you got to fight him next, or got to give it up. You know
So
what I'm saying?
then I think the question then becomes, isn't that a better model for the fans? Right. And I think the answer to that is yes. But then the second question is, do UFC fighters make as much as boxers? And the answer is definitely no. So I think there has to be a way of creating that structure within boxing without ripping the fighters off.
I think there's a way to do it. And even if you keep the 4 sanctioning belts, right, just clean it up. Stop it with all this interim, special, elite, and I mean, these guys have
YMCA.
right, right.
I'm the WBA
These guys have
YMCA
dead guys in
champion.
their rankings, recently. Stop it. Clean up the rankings, right? Let's have I'm not saying you have to have uniform rankings, but have a uniform system for it, right? Because if you look at each division's or organization's rankings, they've got a whole bunch
Bullshit.
of different guys. Yeah, it's bullshit.
The bullshit.
And then again, cut all those extra titles out. Have one belt for each weight class instead of 5. Because in each weight class you could have up to 20 guys have a belt. Stop that shit. You know what I mean? Let's have the 4 guys. That's it. There's
And
4
the
organizations,
belt
4 belts.
organizations should, I think, have some sort of responsibility to, if they're not fighting a champion right now, they're fighting their mandatory. It's one or the other. You're either unifying or you're defending the belt the straight up way. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
even that won't be perfect because the rankings aren't perfect, but at least there's some kind of system in place that says if you're a champion, there's like a certain amount of obligation you have to either fight the number one guy in our shit or to fight another champion, one or the other.
Or timing, right? A lot of these guys will get a belt and then not fight the rest of the year. You look at back in the day when we were kids, or coming up, the champs were fighting every couple of months. Like as soon as you could fight, you did. The it's one of those things where I kind of blame Floyd for this. He would fight once a year, maybe twice if we got lucky, but he could. He'd fight once, take the whole rest of the fucking year off. a lot of these guys are doing the same shit. What's his name? Oh my goodness, he's got all the damn brothers where they got the same name. Antoine
Gary
Russell,
Russell.
Gary Russell. Gary Antoine is the one that's fighting now, right? That's the big
Yep.
one. But I have to separate them because but Gary was, he fight like once every 2 years. You know what I mean? Like, stop that shit. And how do you still have a belt, right? Like, I think if you
Yeah,
have a belt,
he should not be holding on to that for the last couple of defenses.
I think if you have a belt, there should be a time frame, and it should be short. It shouldn't be 12 months. I think in 6 months, if you don't have an injury or you didn't suffer some kind of injury in the fight, as long as you can get sanctioned to fight, you should have to either defend or be in the process of getting your next fight within 6 months if you have a belt. A lot of these guys fight and they take a year off. And it's especially if you're young. Like, I could see, if you've been in the game 20, 30 years, you're, whatever. But a lot of these dudes are in their 20s and they're fighting once a year. Come on, bro.
Right. And even if you wanted to replicate how Floyd did it, it's different to fight Cotto and Oscar De La Hoya and these fighters once a year. That's a different thing than fighting somebody that nobody knows.
Right. If every fight you have is a super fight, then I'm okay with you fighting once a year.
Yeah, if you're making the fights that people want to see, but if you're fighting relatively meaningless fights and you're doing it once a year, like I think Jamal Charlo, his career is going exactly where he fight once a year, and I don't give a fuck about who he's getting in the ring with, ever, really.
These guys are forgetting, like they're wanting to follow the formula that they saw when their heroes were fighting at the tail end, right? Like Pacquiao's and Floyd's and all them. Yeah, they were fighting once a year, but Pacquiao was fighting once a year because he's got government things he's got to do, right?
Right. And
He's
there was a
older.
time where he fought 6 times a year, and that's how he earned
Right.
that.
Floyd early in his career was fighting everybody as much as he could, right? You get to a point where we just talked about it, you can pick your shots, right? Tyson Fury can pick his shots. Why? Because he's earned it. Canelo can pick his shots because he's earned it. But Canelo early on in his career was fighting, damn near every month. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Even you look at the Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., he's not, anywhere near what these guys are. But early in his career, what was he doing? He was fighting all the fucking time. That's why he was able to get those opportunities.
Yep.
These guys got a couple of fights where they fought some notable dudes. Now they think their shit doesn't stink and they can do this to the fans. Nah, man, bro, you've got to fight and beat the guys. Then you can start to pull these punches later on down the line. We're talking about the Corey Spinkses. You never saw Corey Spinks take a year off unless he had something or a reason.
Right. But I think what it is they can do whatever they want. But I think what a lot of the fighters of the post-Floyd era are going to find out is, yeah, you can do whatever you want, but people will stop caring. Like, people will lose interest. They're not just going to eternally be interested in waiting for you to do something.
Bro, if Jake Paul has more fights than you in a year time frame, you're doing it wrong.
That's a fact. That's a fact. That's a fact. Real quick, right? This weekend, we got finally the third fight between Canelo and Triple G. What's your temperature on this one? How you feeling about this one?
I think it took too damn long to do it.
Yep.
I would have liked to have seen an immediate rematch after the second fight, right? Or if not immediate, maybe give them both, one or two buffers, let it fester for a little bit. But I think it took too long. Triple G's what, 40 now? He's in his 40s. I don't know how much he's got left. I watched his last fight on YouTube, and it looks like he's lost a step, but I think he's going to give us the best version of him that he can give, obviously, against Canelo. I just think Canelo right now and where he's at, I think it's going to be a much more difficult fight for Triple G than it could have been, right? With that being said, I still think it's a great fight for as long as it lasts. I think Canelo knocks him out by round 8.
So this is my, and I think Canelo's probably going to win too, but this is my argument for G. If you get past a certain age in boxing, if you have ring rust, people are going to call that age.
Right.
If he had been 30 and he had that performance against Murata, people would have said, wow, he's been out of the ring for a year and a half. But because he's 39 or 40, they go, oh, he's getting older. So I think if you look at the Murata fight and you look at, I think it was round 5, the switch kind of flipped for him. That's who he is still. He still has that ability. So what you saw rounds 5 through until the stoppage, I think that's what he's capable of. And I do think that that guy still hits hard, still has a great jab, and still, when he catches his rhythm, is a problem. I just don't know if it's enough to beat Canelo.
That's a good point, man. My point or counter to that is, do you think he has enough of that left against Canelo? Right,
No.
like, because I think Canelo is even better than and at least in my opinion, from the eye test, right? Even in his loss to Bivol, I think he's got a lot more left than Triple G does. Now, to your point, if Triple G gives you that, right, that round 5 through the stoppage in the beginning, well, hold on, wait a minute. then like, if he starts that way, then I think he could, then it's a whole different thing. Because
if he starts like how he started against Murata, Canelo's gonna fucking get in that ass. You know what I'm saying?
But if he starts off like he did in round 5, or if he starts off, even when if you watch the first 2 fights, if he starts off slow and kind of tries to build into it, I think Canelo's all on his ass. But if he starts like he does when he gets going, he needs to do that from the jump, because I don't think he has enough of it left to last 12 rounds with Canelo. You know what I mean? For it to be interesting. So, but that would be a hell of a fight if he starts off that way, bro. Because then I don't know if Canelo can weather that, onslaught early. But I don't know, man. I still have to go with Canelo, but I think it's going to be a hell of a fight as long as it lasts.
I think it's an 8-4 kind of fight, but I think a lot of people think Canelo's just going to walk through him, and I don't see that happening. I think this is very. If you look at the context of the third Pacquiao Marquez fight, because the third one I actually thought was like kind of a ripoff. I thought Marquez won that fight pretty clearly. If you look at that fight, those guys had like the same age gap that these guys have. You know what I'm saying? And sometimes a guy just got your number. I do think Canelo's still going to win, but another reason why I think G still got it is you never see guys calling him out. And there's plenty of undefeated young guys that could really catapult their career to another level. Bubu Andrade, Jamal Charlo. Again, these guys are also in their 30s. There's a bunch of them that could change the status of their career by beating Golovkin, and you never see people call him out, bro.
You saw the last guy that called him out was Daniel Jacobs, and you saw how that worked. You know what I'm saying? Like, and I think the world of Daniel Jacobs, but let's face it, you see the trajectory his career's had since he fought Triple G. I think he fought both of them, right? He fought Canelo and Triple G, but Triple G to me is one of those things where he's kind of like this era's Bernard Hopkins, right? I think if he really wanted to, he could probably fight, until he's damn near 50. And I have Canelo knocking him out in 8 rounds, but that's not me saying Canelo's going to dog walk Triple G. Like, I think he's going to catch him with something a little bit later. I think because I think Triple G's legs aren't going to be what they were. I think, so he's going to be able to catch him with something. With that being said, I'm not here saying that there isn't a possibility that a reverse happens, right? Like, if Triple G comes out the gate storming, it's possible he catches Canelo with something, and we haven't really seen Canelo have to fight through that, right? With somebody, even I thought he was going to have to deal with that with Kovalev, and he never did.
Right.
If Canelo gets caught with something hard, who knows? Because we've never had to see him get past that. And I think Triple G, to your point, he's not going to pull an Andy Ruiz. He's not going to, stand back and take pictures. He's going to go in there and he's going to go for the kill. So it could go either way. I just think, in my opinion, I think that the fresher legs will be Canelo later in those later rounds, and I think he can catch Triple G with something.
Yeah, I still think it's a great fight, and it's not as exciting as it would have been. And part of that too is that there was 2 points where it got missed, right? The obvious one was right after they fought, running back a third time, 2 classics. The other time that they missed it was obviously there was a lot of fighters and a lot of fights that didn't happen because of the pandemic. And I think if they had done it, in the winter of 2020, or somewhere in there when boxing as like big events was just starting to come back, I mean, I think that would have been an ideal time to do it. You know what I'm saying? I think people would have been just as excited, and they didn't do it then either. And I think, again, so much of the zone's promise was built around this fight getting made. And I think it's butterflied out to where it's affected like the whole functionality of the network.
That's another thing that's kind of whack about this, is that the fight's on the DAZN, right? Like the DAZN production is the bane of my existence, man. Like I've watched these fights and I'm like, the fights have been.
I do production.
Cards have been garbage.
I do production work for a living. If I stepped on a cable the way these fucks step on cables every time and fucks up the camera or the audio, I would just get fired everywhere I went. Like, are they just firing people in their audio department every week?
I don't know, but it's trash. Like it seems like and it doesn't seem like, okay, you expected these things to happen early on, because when they first came out, right? You expect motherfuckers to make mistakes out the gate, but you expect them to clean it up. You know what I mean? And things to get better. It's gotten worse. Like it's not getting any better.
100%.
And it's like, it's like, okay, can we have some, like, can they just hire a crew, right? That isn't theirs, that knows what the fuck they're doing, somebody to completely come in and run their show for them for one fight. You know what I'm saying? Get the guys who know what they're doing to come in. Maybe get some of these guys out of retirement. You know what I mean? Just bring them in for one fight, so that we know that at least the production value, because let's face it, for big fights like these, the production value is just as important as the fight itself.
DAZN, I got 3 words for DAZN, bro. I got 3 words. Bright colored gaff. That's all I got for them, bro. Bright colored gaff.
I have 3 words, but I can't say them right now because it'll be banned or canceled or something. And bro, I don't know. Like every DAZN fight, I'm like, oh, it's like I think we talked about this in the chat, right? Like I was like, we talk about these big fights that are coming up, and then somebody will mention that it's on DAZN, and I'm like, ah, shit, I'm not watching that. Like I automatically, like my interest level goes from here to.
But that's the shit about boxing, and again, not to get too meta, but it's kind of the thing about America, right? Is like all this money around, but there's all this shit that doesn't work. And that's boxing right now. Like there's never been more opportunities to get rich, and yet like basic shit is like not there.
I know I was joking earlier, but my thing is this: if Jake Paul can do it, bro, this is a YouTube guy. And as much as people might, you can have your opinions on him as a boxer, this, that, and the third, right? All of his events, though, have been top notch, bro.
Yep.
Like I haven't had not one problem with any of the production of the shows. They've been, the fights themselves. I mean, that Serrano oh my God, that at the Garden, bro. I was like, yo, and this is a guy, he just started doing this shit a couple years back, and he's doing it better than DAZN, this is what you do. This is what you set out to do. This is what the whole purpose of your company. This dude's a YouTube guy, who's coming in. He's a novice, and he's putting on.
But he's an entertainer. That's his main trade. Is he's an entertainer. So he knows about these things, and I don't think that it would hurt to have more thinking like that around the production, around literal production of shows, where Like, it doesn't all have to be this barely functional, swagless fucking display. You know, it can be more than that.
What do you think of what he's bringing to the sport? Do you think it hurts, or
I think it's
do you think
both.
it helps?
I think it's both. I think it's both. I think it's good and bad. I think the good is that there's new eyes on the sport that wouldn't be on it otherwise. Not that I think very many of those give a shit about other boxers, but I don't think it's I think it's a good thing that they're seeing who's on the undercard. I thought that he was obviously part of promoting like one of the biggest women's fights ever, and it was a great fight. It wasn't just a great women's fight; it was a great event. Um, so I think
I
those.
thought it was. I thought that was the fight of the year, bro. Like in my
Yep,
opinion, I was like, yo, this is ridiculous, male or female. I don't give a fuck. You
facts.
know, yeah,
But so I think that's the good. I think the bad is there's a couple layers, right? But I think the influencer boxing thing that's going to become more common, and it's going to be an even more watered down version of what he's doing. So it's going to be, I think that's going to be dangerous. I think people are going to get hurt because they don't realize that you can't play boxing. And I think new fans are going to get it conflated to where they actually believe that Jake Paul can beat Canelo. They actually believe these things are real, and that's fine. Have fun with that. But I think when I go on ESPN and there's two articles about quarterbacks that fought each other and video guys that play video games on Twitch that fought each other, and there's another Jake Paul, it's like, I don't fuck with this shit, bro. And it's cool if other
yeah,
people want to fuck with it, but this confusion about that it's the same thing, it's not the same thing, bro. These guys will get
yeah.
killed. These guys will literally get killed if they fight real fighters. So, and I'm not saying that Jake Paul has no boxing ability, but if he had to do any of the same kind of come up that the average fighter would have to do, I would respect it more. But he has fought 40-year-old wrestlers with hip replacements, right? He's fought basketball
Yeah.
players, and he's fought again guys that play video games on Twitch. I like my chances against all those guys too. So you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't get why people are jerking this kid off all the time.
What I say is this: is I don't have a problem with what he's doing. I have a problem with people's reaction to it, right? So, and I think that's kind of what you're saying, right? Like it's the, just like there was this card this past weekend where like you said, you've got all these social media guys, YouTube stars fighting each other. I think we there was the who was it the two running backs, Adrian Peterson and Le'Veon Bell were fighting. That's dangerous, right? Because these guys, it's basically a glorified tough man competition, is what you're getting now. And people thinking, oh, that's real boxing. That's the dangerous part. It was dangerous when Tough Man was doing it, right?
Yep.
Because literally you could show up that night in your, cut off shorts and wife beater, and they give you something, hey, sign this and go fight, right? It's basically that on a bigger scale, better production. But I think what Jake Paul is doing for the sport is good. I think that people's reaction to it is, like you said, people are saying, "Oh, well, he's, he can beat all these." No, he can't. And I think he knows that, right? Like
But also I think and I'll let you finish that point. But I think the argument that somebody watched Jake Paul, right, and now they're interested in Jaron Ennis from watching Jake Paul. That's not reality.
no, but I do think that people are paying attention to the women's boxing that weren't paying attention to it before Jake Paul, right?
Hell yeah.
I think that Serrano fight and that fight may, even though Clarissa Shields is, she calls herself the GOAT, right? Even though she's that, look at how much more people are paying attention to her fights. You know what I'm saying? She had to go to MMA to get fans, right? She had to cross over. She had to do something that most guys in boxing don't have to do or will never do just to get fans. Serrano was a 7-time champion in 7 different weight classes. We're talking about one of the most decorated female boxers of all time. Jake Paul had to come in and say, hey, pay attention to her, right? So I like that part of it, where people are
I
actually
do
starting
too.
to pay attention to people that weren't getting attention before that. Because like we said, that Serrano Taylor fight was like fight of the year kind of shit. if he has more of the boots Ennis kind of guys on his cards, then maybe we can bring some attention to some of these guys
I just
who
worry
aren't
about
getting love.
I hear you, but I worry about a model of boxing where every card, the main event is a celebrity, and then the real fighters are like the side hustle. And that's scary to me because I think more people right now would pay to watch Elon Musk box than they would to watch a lot of boxers. So I could see a world where you just have like wealthy celebrities fighting in main events against, fucking video game characters or whatever they do. And then the real fights are the undercard. That's not a model of boxing I'm interested in.
I think it's gonna go away. Like I personally, I feel like it's going to do what the tough man did. Right? It's gonna get popular for a minute, right?
But
Like
go think
it'll
about
be
that though.
popping, but then it goes away.
More people would invest money to watch Elon Musk versus Jeffrey Bezos than
Oh
an
yeah,
actual fight, right? That's always going to be there. And
oh yeah.
if boxing is going to always only be beholden to the dollar and not the fans, the ones that actually make the fights happen in a sense, that's the model you're going to get. Is it's going to get so much worse than Jake Paul. You know
I
what I'm
mean,
saying?
you look at it back. I mean, back in the day, right? Those tough man fights. Who was it? Refrigerator Perry was in there fighting dudes. Like, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And it was like Butterbean. Let's face it. Butterbean made his bones off of fighting bums, literally off the street. You know what
Yep.
I mean? So yeah, to your point, yeah, it's always gonna be there. Is Butterbean a top 10, heavyweight champion of the world kind of conversation? No, he is what he is, right? I think Jake Paul is what he is. I think these YouTube guys are what they are, and it's gonna go away. It's gonna be dangerous while it's out there, right?
It's not though
But I
because
think it goes away.
Butterbean
I
could
think it goes. I think the popularity of it goes down. I think it'll always be around, right? But I think it's not going to be as popular as it. People lose interest in that eventually. I think, and then it'll come back around. Somebody famous will
My
fight again.
concern is that it's resonating so well with non-boxing fans that it's going to overtake real boxing. Go on ESPN right now, bro. How many articles and pictures are of guys that aren't fighters? Most of them. Like I think if we're not careful, it's going to get real fucking weird. And I think Floyd and Conor McGregor have a piece in that also.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you look at what Floyd's doing now, right? I mean, he's
He got a
fighting.
piece in it.
Yeah, he's fighting exhibitions and they're paying him more or as much.
He didn't even fight the good Paul brother. He fought the other Paul brother, you know?
Right. And here's another thing. I do want to. You brought that up, bro. Floyd Mayweather is 160 pounds soaking wet now that he's retired. You know what I'm saying? He used to walk around. People don't understand this. The reason his career was as long as it was because he walked around at his fighting weight. He didn't have to cut 30, 40, 50 pounds to fight, right? It's the reason he was able to fight as long as he was. A lot of guys lose that these days. But the point I'm trying to make is that Floyd right now, out of shape Floyd is 160, 165 pounds, right? Soaking wet. He's fighting a guy who's north of well over 200 pounds, right? That's the thing that to me is scary. A lot of people are going to think they can do that, right? These YouTube guys, I mean, look at when Jake Paul fought Nate Robinson, right? Nate Robinson's half his size. Like, yeah, he's a former pro athlete, but he's a former pro basketball player. Anybody who saw that fight, it looked like Nate Robinson learned how to box that day. You know what I'm saying? Jake Paul had been boxing for years before he fought Nate Robinson, right? And it showed. And Nate Robinson was, again, what, 170 pounds, tops. He's fighting a guy who's 205. There's weight classes for a reason, right? Floyd Mayweather can do it because he's, arguably the best boxer of all time. He's definitely one of, if not the best in our era, right? Yes, he can fight a guy who's 205 because he knows what the fuck he's doing. You can't, right? If you're a YouTuber and you weigh 150 pounds, don't sign on to fight another YouTuber who's 220, right? I don't give a fuck how nice you are with your hands in the street. You are going to get hurt, and you are going to get hurt bad, right? And that's the thing that scares me the most. You want to put guys in there that weigh the same, look the same, whatever. It's when you start getting in that disparity of size and weight, just because it's gonna get likes and clicks and all that shit. That's when it gets scary. Or you take people who have absolutely no idea how to fucking throw a punch, right? Like what was it? A couple years back, they had the Kardashians fighting people. Whoa, you know,
But
Kim Kardashian is
that's
nice to
where I
look
think
at, but
it's headed. That's where I think it's headed, bro. That's what I don't like about what he's bringing to boxing is I do believe that ultimately people are less interested in boxing and more interested in aside from boxing fans like us, most people are more interested in seeing people they know box than watching high level boxing. And I personally think that if we're not careful, boxing is going to become cards that are headlined by celebrities, and the real fights are the undercard. They're the side hustle. They're the afterthought. I think we're
but
moving in
see,
that direction.
here's where I want to separate that, right? I honestly think Jake Paul really wants to bring more attention to some of those, the boxers, right? I mean, because again, we saw what we did with Serrano Taylor, but it's the reaction to people. They're like, well, it's Jake Paul. I want to see Jake Paul and whoever he's fighting, right?
Don't you
It's
think you could do some of that though by fighting a boxer?
I think you should have fought Hasim Rockman. Like I think that whole thing was a debacle. To be honest with you, I think that fight didn't go through because he realized Rockman could whoop his ass. You know what I mean?
But that's what I'm saying. Is that whole thing even good for boxing? That overtook the whole narrative when there was big fights going on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we're
Now
talking
he's
about,
fighting what, Anderson Silva,
yeah.
who's in his 40s,
And
in an
that's by
MMA fight.
far the most credible fight he's ever had. By far.
Because Anderson Silva actually used to box, like legitimately.
He beat Chavez.
Yeah,
He
and
beat Chavez Jr.
Anderson Silva can legitimately box. I'll give him that.
Sure.
But is Anderson Silva beating any other boxer right now? So is he fighting anybody in the top 20?
I don't
Anderson Silva.
know. I don't know. But I think the other like main thing that is frustrating to me about it is there's so many boxers that have athletically achieved so like way more than Jake Paul, right? Guys that haven't even turned pro that have done way more than he'll ever do. And any card that he's on, he's making the most money. And it's again, you're not tying the pay to your achievement, you're tying the pay to your popularity. So that's where I think boxing's got it fucked up, you know?
You can take that pretty much in any sport though, bro. Like how many times have we seen football players get contracts we didn't think they deserved because they were popular football players, right? Or they had one good season where you take a guy who's been consistent for 10 years, but he might not have the big year, right? But he's been consistent. He doesn't get the big paycheck. Or NBA players, right? NBA players, guys in Major League Baseball, soccer. I think you can do that in any sport. But, you look at Ryan
It's
Garcia,
not
right?
as exaggerated though. Ellen DeGeneres doesn't play for the Yankees for a night, you know?
Yeah, this is true. Yeah. But you look at Ryan Garcia, right? A lot of people say the reason he's getting the fights that he has is because of his social media presence. There's this guy in UFC. He's getting a lot of the fights he gets because he colors his hair different. He's on social media. I think guys are using that now because, like it or not, it's kind of the world we're in now, right? I'll be honest with you. I didn't have Instagram before. I came on the ITR. I just did it. You know what I mean? Because I didn't need it for anything else. Now I've got Twitter, IG. I've got all the. Why? Because guess what? It's the way the world works. You know what I mean? To reach, especially fans in their 20s and younger, or even people in their 30s now, you've got to kind of have a social media presence to gain, popularity. And I think that,
And I don't have a problem with that. I guess my problem with it is if you don't have that, I don't think that should hurt you. Like the sport of boxing should be a sport the way every other sport is. Like if Gronk is popular because he's on TikTok, that's fine. But another great football player is still going to get paid to play football. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
he's not hogging all the slots.
It's a hit or miss, right? Because everybody knows who Gronk is because he's Gronk, right? Not necessarily. There are people who know who Gronk is who don't know he plays football.
Right.
You know what I mean? There, everybody knows LeBron James plays basketball, right? But how many kids that that are coming up now know LeBron James from the Space Jam movies, right? They never watched him play basketball. They watched the movie and they're like, "Oh, okay, cool. He's cool." Same with Michael Jordan. There are kids who've never seen Michael Jordan play who are wearing his shoes right now today, right? It's the same kind of model, but yeah, I mean, I think that in boxing, as a purist, right? I'm with you. By the way, I agree 100%. I want to say that first. I think one of my favorite things back in the day was watching Friday night fights. Nobody knew who the fuck any of those guys were, right? But they
Shit was
put on
the
some of the
best.
most entertaining fights, right? One of my most favorite fights was Mickey Ward and Manuel Augustus. It was
Bro, Augustus is my fucking guy, dude.
right. And you look at his record, right? It was the most trash record. But when you look at a lot of his losses, split decision, split decision, split decision, split decision, and he's losing these fights to guys he beat, but because they're the prospect, they're getting these dubs, right? And he's beat not and I've seen some of his fights where he whitewashes the dude and gets, a loss. So, I think he had like 36 losses, to 38 wins. But I'd watch him every single fucking time he's on television because you're going to get a great fight out of him at least. You know what I'm saying? But you don't have, to your point earlier, how many guys now have 10 losses in their fights are on TV?
Not that many, bro. It's not very common anymore. But
Right.
that's the other thing too. People don't understand. I use this word lovingly. A lot of jobbers can fight, bro. A lot of
Yeah.
jobbers can fight. And that's the other
Yeah.
thing too. If Jake Paul fought one high level jobber, I'd probably shut the fuck up. But he doesn't do that. He fights Twitch gamers. So it's just that I think that's where I come back to is everyone's hyped him to be this thing like he could be a world champion and it's like I haven't even seen him in with just like a gym rat. So what am I getting excited about? I don't know. Regardless, the last thing I wanted to bring up with you before we wrap this one up, obviously the big card this weekend got canceled because of the Queen's death. Huge bummer. I was excited about this one, but I guess it gives us the opportunity to do a breakdown. How do you feel about first of all, the matchup between Savannah Marshall and Clarissa Shields?
I think it's interesting on a couple of different levels, right? Like you have the story, right? The backstory that, the only person to beat, Clarissa Shields is Savannah Marshall in the amateurs, right? Um, but I think none of that matters when you look at their pro careers. I think it's an interesting matchup because Savannah's got knockout power. She's winning, a lot of her fights by stoppage, right? Clarissa doesn't. You know what I mean? For all of her accolades, she's probably one of the best technical female fighters in the game, if not the. But she's not putting females away. She's not putting girls away. So I think if it's to me, it's one of those fights where it's the boxer versus the puncher. If Savannah can land her punch, on Clarissa, which is not easily done, right? There've been pretty much everybody that fights Clarissa says the same thing. I'm going to knock this bitch out because she can't stop me. And you see how that works. She touches him up, makes him look stupid, and she hits harder than people think. She just doesn't have knockout power, right? She's got enough power to keep
Nah,
your
yeah,
ass
she
off
can
her.
hit. Yeah, she can hit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the Floyd conversation. He might not knock you out, but you're not bum rushing him either. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? You're not bum rushing Clarissa Shields. And if you are, she's gonna make you look stupid. For in my opinion, I think Clarissa Shields box circles around Savannah Marshall and gets the dub. It'll be interesting because Savannah Marshall can knock her out if she lands. I just don't think she will. And I think that Clarissa wins. Are they do 10 rounds in female fights, right?
Yeah, it's so
Not
stupid.
not 12. I think it's, I guess 7-3, probably 6-4 if Savannah has a couple good rounds, but I would say it'd be 7-3 Clarissa.
I don't think I think I'm leaning that direction also because I kind of thought Christina Hammer was going to beat her, and that was not competitive at all. So there's something I'm missing. But when I watch her fight with Hannah Gabriels, do you remember that fight?
I don't think so. I don't think I will.
When Clarissa fought Hannah Gabriels, she got dropped in the first round. And I personally didn't think that she won the fight. I didn't think she did enough offensively to separate herself.
I did see that. I didn't know what the other girl's name was, but I did see that. Yeah, okay.
The girl from Costa Rica, yeah. So
Yeah.
if you'll recall, regardless of how the decision went, it was very close fight, right?
Yeah.
I think that Savannah Marshall is bigger and stronger and maybe even a better boxer than Hannah Gabriels. And I think that if she hits Clarissa with anything like what she got hit with in that fight, it's a problem. So I think that there's a puncher's chance, but Savannah can set that up. You know what I mean? She's a lot like Tyson Fury in her movements, and she works with those guys. And I also think she's nastier than anybody Clarissa's been in with. She's got a real fucking fight to her, that girl.
I think I'll say this. To your point, I think the only detriment to Clarissa Shields' game, the only chink in her armor that I've seen, right? And I haven't watched all of her fights. I'll be 100% honest with you, but the fights that I have seen, when she gets too full of herself, right? If she gets too cocky, right? That's when, she's beatable because she doesn't think you can do anything to her. And then then somebody starts to come on and then she figures it out, and pulls it out. But you can't do that with Savannah Marshall, right? You can't go in there thinking, I'm just going to whitewash this heifer, because she can, even though she can knock you out, she's got, boxing. She's going to be the best test you've had to this point. She can box and she can knock you out. We're going to find out how much of a punch Clarissa can take, when this fight comes around. So to me, if Marshall doesn't knock her out early, I think Clarissa boxes the shit out of her. You know what I mean? So I think Marshall's got to catch her though, right? That's going to be the hard part. If Shields is on her game, because we've all seen when she's 100% focused and locked in, she's unbeatable, bro. Like you can't land punches against her. But if she comes in there with this big head, like, oh, I'm just finna dog walk you, that's not going to work against Marshall. So I really do believe, and I'm not trying to discount Savannah Marshall at all. I think she's great, but I really do believe this fight is going to go depending on how Clarissa Shields has taken it, right? If she's 100% locked in, it's going to be a long night for Savannah Marshall.
Well, and that's the other thing too. I think that that's a great point, is that Clarissa's fought much better competition. So we know I can prove what she does a little more than I can prove what Savannah Marshall does. Like Savannah hasn't fought anybody as good as Hannah Gabriels. I don't think Savannah's fought anyone as good as Christina Hammer. So there's multiple wins on Clarissa's record that you could look at as like, there may be a 50-50 fight with Savannah if you have, you know what I'm saying, on paper. And Clarissa, right. I don't know if she won the Gabriel's fight, but the Hammer fight she made, easy work. So I think if you're a Clarissa fan, that's the fight you're looking at to go. I'm hoping.
And is Clarissa 100% focused on boxing? Because she's been doing that MMA shit, right? She
now that can fuck your timing up. That can fuck your timing up if you start, programming into your body kick distance and takedowns and shit. Like that's not good for boxing.
Yeah, and I think, didn't she just have an MMA fight earlier this year, or was training for one that got canceled or something like that? So, I mean, now that we start to add those variables up, I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, this could be a little bit more interesting than maybe I even think, and it could be closer, because, like, to your point, right? Training for MMA is miles different from training for boxing. So I think again, so then to me it comes back to what mind frame is Clarissa Shields in, right? Is she in this? I'm the GOAT. I don't need to take anybody serious shit, or is she like, yo, I need to prove a point against this Marshall girl who says she can beat me because she beat me once back in, when they were amateurs, right? She want, I think she does. I think she wants to prove, hey, look, she got the one, but I'm finna show y'all, I'm still the GOAT here, and I'm finna dog walk this girl. I think again, if Clarissa's on her shit, it's easy money.
Go back and watch that Gabriel's fight. I'm just saying, I agree with you, but go back and watch that fight, and I think you'll see the crack I'm talking about.
Now the other fight on that card, though, I was more interested in that, the Mayer and Baumgartner.
I was about to bring that up. How do you feel about Mayer Baumgartner? I mean, I think that first of all, shout out to the fucking women for making some actually good fights that people want to watch.
These are the fights we want to see in men's boxing, right?
Yeah,
they're actually fighting each other at their best, right? And they're not quabbling over money. They're saying, okay, fuck it, let's fight each other. Whatever needs to get done to get it done. So yes, I applaud them on that. I think Mayer wins, and I think Mayer wins easily. Again, I've seen Baumgartner fight. I like what she brings to the table. I appreciate her skill set. I just think she's not on the same level. You know what I mean? And maybe I'm wrong. Like maybe
well, and she doesn't have the recklessness that Hamadouche had. Like the last girl that Mayer fought, Mava Hamadouche. That girl's just relentless. Like her pace is relentless. Everything about her is just nonstop, coming forward, pressing you. And I don't think that's
Baumgartner's
temperament.
Nah, she's a little bit more technical. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that could give Mayer problems. Don't get me wrong, but and maybe it's because I've seen Mayer fight more. Because she's been on ESPN a lot. She's been on TV a lot, right? I've only seen like, if I'm being honest, like one or two Baumgartner's fights. But from what I've seen, I'm more impressed with what I've seen in Mayer. That's not to say that this can't be a great fight. But I just think Mayer, I think she wins going away if she doesn't stop her. You know what I mean? I think she's got way too many tools, as opposed to what I've seen from Baumgartner at this point. And again, I could be wrong because female boxing has proven me wrong a couple of times. I thought Katie Taylor, to be honest with you, I thought she was nowhere in Amanda Serrano's league. You know what I mean? And we saw how that fight went. Because I've seen Serrano fight, right, at all different weight levels, and I'm like, this girl's, she's. I think Katie Taylor's great, but I don't think she's on Serrano's, and that ended up being best fight I've seen in my whole fucking life. So far, well, in the last year or two anyway. But like, so they could prove me wrong, but I think Mayer kind of just walks through her, if I'm being honest.
Here's a real question. How many times have you seen Terry Harper fight?
Once.
Against Baumgartner?
Yeah. If I'm being honest, once.
I'm going to tell you right now, bro, that girl's got skills. That
Harper?
Yeah, bro. That girl's got some fucking skills. She's got good feet. She's got a good jab. She's got a good IQ. She can kind of do it all. And she got caught. So
yeah,
I don't think she's as good as Michaela, but she's like a similar genre of fighter.
But Michaela's got a lot of things on Baumgartner too. Like she's got the range. She's got this. You know what I'm saying? Like to me, it just seems like unless Baumgartner can make Michaela uncomfortable, which you pointed to is not really kind of her. Like I think she'd have to change her style up to give Michaela problems. Yep. You know what I mean? She has a skill set that can give Michaela problems, but she's got to be willing to engage in a way I don't think that that she does, bro. Again, get me right if I'm wrong, but I just don't think that, and I think Michaela's going to be able to execute her game plan.
I think Michaela's going to outbox her. I think there's always the possibility you get caught, especially that's why I asked if you had seen Terry Harper, because she's somebody that I wouldn't think would get caught with something like that. That's not her style. That's not her vibe. She's a very smart fighter, but she did get caught. And I think anybody kind of can. I think Michaela can get caught, But I think now that there's like evidence of it, like, okay, if this girl catches you, you're maybe not going to recover from it. She's
Right.
not going to engage in that way. She's not going to do it on her terms. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
I think Terry was sort of not reckless, but I don't know that she was really thinking that through all the way, not knowing like, wow,
Maybe she didn't think she could get caught. You
right.
know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And by the way, Terry Harper is moving up to junior middleweight from junior lightweight.
Wow.
It's a huge jump, which is
That's yeah.
she's going from 130 to
But
154.
you notice women do that with a lot more ease than guys do, right?
And
Look
well,
at
they also have less options, bro. There's not as many
yeah.
options. But I think you're right. There's something to that because I was going on Amanda Serrano's box rec at some point, and at some point in her career, she fought a fight at welterweight, and then the next fight fought at bantamweight.
Right.
Never see that.
And it was like a couple of months. Like it wasn't like, a year later. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, she went from
there was a
147 to 118.
there was a stretch where she fought in 4 different weight classes within a 2-year time frame, bro. Like name a male boxer who's even capable of doing that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's and she's winning these fights. You know what I mean? I think they were all championship fights. You know what I mean? So she's fighting the best at that division and changing her weight class like that. Look at the Taylor fight. She comes up for that, or and she's able to come up and go down as she kind of pleases. I don't know if there's a just a genetic makeup for women that allows them to do this, but you look at Shields. I mean, look at how quickly she's come along. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't expect that. I don't know if anybody else did.
I think in men's boxing, there's more of an inclination to I'm going to cut to the point where if I try to spit, nothing comes out. I don't think
I hate it.
bodies can do that as well. And I don't think that every women's fighter, I don't think every female boxer is cutting weight to the point of like not being functional the way the men are.
I hate weight cuts, bro. Because especially nowadays, to make money, you see guys damn near, passing out at weigh-ins.
Look at Chris Eubank, bro. Like, what the fuck is he doing?
Bro, you see dudes doing stuff where you're like, bro, that's not healthy at all. Like, you know what I mean? Just so you can make money. I would love to see fighters actually fighting. If they're gonna follow one thing Floyd did, I wish fighters would do that. Fight at a weight where you can be comfortable year round fighting at it. You know what I'm saying? Because there's money to be made there, and I get it. I really do. I understand the point that guys are doing, but you look at, Gervonta Davis, how many times has he had issues making weight? Right. And he's one of the biggest names in the sport right now. Canelo has found a way to even his shit out, but he had some issues before. You look at these guys outside of heavyweight, pretty much just about everybody in those lower weights has had an issue at some point with weight. Why is that? Because you're walking around at 170 pounds trying to fight at 135, 140. Stop it. You know what I mean? Like, I remember, what's his name?
Right. You either have to move up in weight or you have to walk around at a lighter weight. It's one or the other.
What's his name? The dude who beat Zab Judah, Baldomir. Remember him? The dude was 185, 190 pounds. And, he's cutting he's cutting 40, 50 pounds to be a welterweight. Come on, bro. Look for Fernando Vargas. Remember him? I mean, I think after his boxing career, that dude blew up to like 250. Like,
and I think that comes because if you're ballooning back up to 170 after your fight, on some level, maybe it's lack of discipline, but on some level, your body's telling you like this is what's natural. So if your body's telling you that's what's natural, right? If you get out of the camp and you're not like partying and eating like a dickhead, your body's just naturally going to go where it's supposed to go, right? So you don't want to go so far below that it takes something from you. Like a perfect example, when I went to California and I covered the Mercito Gesta Joel Diaz fight for ITR, when I went to that media workout, it was very obvious that Marcito did not have a bad weight cut, that he was comfortable. And it was pretty obvious that Joel was uncomfortable. And that was the biggest difference maker in the fight, was that Marcito was fresh, even though he was like 10 years older. He was fresh and not drained, and Joel was a little bit drained.
And how often does that play a factor into fights, bro?
Yeah.
Kids who shouldn't be taking L's when they take them are taking them because they're
By the way,
drained shit.
and by the way, youth should not be cutting weight in general.
No,
If you're
no,
growing, you should not be cutting weight.
no. It's ridiculous. It's the amount of weight that they're cutting that's the problem to me. You know what I mean? I think if you're cutting 20 plus pounds every time you fight, you should be fighting in a different division. You know what I'm saying?
And but that culture starts young, bro. I mean, even in my high school, there was that weight cut wrestling culture. And I had a friend who got into a car accident because he passed out. Now he was fine after, but that shows you, like, I don't remember what he was wrestling at, but he was trying to get his fucking weight down at 15, 16, 17 years old. And he got into a car accident.
When I was a freshman football player, right? I was working out with these wrestlers. I had never been in the gym before. Like, I was just showing up and playing ball. When you get to high school, you realize you got to hit the weight. So anyway, I'm in there working out with these wrestlers, and I go to the showers, and there's this dude in the sauna he had taken an exercise bike. He had put it in the sauna, and he's in there with a hoodie. He's like full sweat pants, hoodie, and he's riding this exercise bike. And I'm like, bro, what the fuck are you doing? And he's got the heat all as high as it can go. He comes out, he takes this hoodie off. He's got another sweatshirt on under that. And then when he takes the other sweatshirt off, all you see is just this puddle of water come out. And I'm like, that cannot be, like, there's got to be somewhere. Why isn't there an adult here telling him to stop?
Because there was an adult there that told him to do it. That's what's fucked up.
Right. And when I saw him off season, right, he was my size. And mind you, I'm a football player. You know what I mean? This dude, he was trying to get to 115. When I saw him later on, he was walking around at like 180, bro. Like, I mean, he looked like he could be on the football team. And I'm like, that's ridiculous. And he said he wasn't wrestling anymore because he had tore his ACL. You know what I mean? And I was like, well, but he's still working out every day. He was still shredded. Don't get me wrong. He's shredded. Wrestlers and gymnasts, the most in shape people in the world, shredded still at 180 pounds, and could probably go play football. He'd probably wrestle at 180 if he really wanted to. But, because he was winning, or that's what the team needed him to be. They needed him to be this smaller weight. I don't think it was 115, but it was something ridiculously low. I think it was like, 140, 130, some shit like that. But, you're walking around 180 pounds shredded.
Yeah, I mean, not only is that not smart at all, like, it doesn't make you a better athlete, but I think that just, in a larger sense, speaks to kind of like how weird and fucked up American sports culture is. I mean, I literally grew up with, like, children cutting weight for a sport they're not getting paid for. You know what I'm saying? With grown ass fucking boomers telling them
they
to
do it everywhere.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's not good.
It's I have a friend whose daughter is in gymnastics, right? And they said she was too big to compete. But when you watch like all the exercises, she's doing better than the little tiny little girls. Like she's just she's one of those kids that's just naturally athletic, right? Like when you see a kid, no matter what sport it is, and you go, they've got it, right? She's got it, which she didn't get from her daddy because he's got two left feet, and her mom's like this computer genius nerd. So but I don't know where she's getting this athletic ability, but she has it, right? And she's doing stuff, early on that some of the older kids can't even do. But they keep harping on him and her mom whenever she goes there. about getting her weight down. And it's like, but why? Like, if it's not affecting her performance, right? Like, because she's still growing. I think she's like 12. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, they're like, yes, but, you know, we need her to, and excuse me, they said, we need her to fit the uniform.
That's disgusting, bro. That's disgusting.
Like, what are we teaching these kids, bro? Like, and I know that's gymnastics is not boxing, but it's like this little girl is outperforming the kids you're sending to the Junior Olympics. But because she doesn't look like the other kids, you're going to hold her back. Man, get the fuck out of here, bro. But it's similar in boxing, right? You've got guys at, you know, 130, 140 who really should be fighting at like junior middleweight, you know, 154, but they're trying to cut that weight to get into, you know, what they think is more money. Or like, you know, you got guys that are in a division where they might not make as much money. You know, like if you're a junior middleweight, you might want to move up to middleweight, or you're packing on.
But I think a lot of times too, they just do it to get an edge. But I think the edge gets removed if you can't take punches as well and you're slower, right? That doesn't help.
We've seen it a million times. I mean, you how many times have you been watching boxing and you see a dude who doesn't look like he has it, but then any other night he has it, right? Well, it's because the weight cut has cut the fuck up with him. You know what I mean? He's been cutting too goddamn much. You know, Victor Ortiz was talking about that shit. You know, when he was coming up. You know, the Peterson brothers, right? They talked about it, and then they got somebody who came in. They got a nutritionist. They you know, and you know, Lamont said he got a lot better when he got, you know, because he was cutting weight incorrectly. It wasn't that he stopped cutting weight, but he was doing it so wrong, right? But you saw later in his career, he looked fresher, you know, he looked better, even in his losses, right? It's, you know, that's another problem too. Guys are cutting weight incorrectly, like they're doing it completely wrong. Nobody has a nutritionist. Everybody, you know, I don't know what that is, but guys for some reason refuse to have somebody else tell them, hey, if you eat properly, if you know, do these exercises, right, you won't have to get into that sauna. You won't have to kill yourself to make these weights. There's still a way to do it and not do it to where you're completely drained come fight night.
100%, bro. 100%. Well, Nigel, this has been a hell of a fucking episode. And I really appreciate you I really appreciate you coming on, I should say. Is there anything, anyone, anywhere that you want to shout out before we wrap this up?
Man, I'm shouting out the Slip and Weave podcast, goddamn it. That's what I'm doing, baby. You know what I mean? I appreciate you having me on. You know, when you were on our show, it's probably one of the best episodes we've had, you know what I mean? You know, and 21 questions, you know, the short for that is coming out soon. By the way, I'm editing the rest of that out right now. So, you know, follow us at Sounds About Right now on IG and Twitter. But yeah, the Slip and Weave podcast, man, I enjoy all your episodes, bro. You're doing a great job, man. And I can't wait to be on again in the future.
I appreciate that, man. I really do. We'll talk soon. All right, Nigel?
Appreciate you, bro. Have a good one.
Peace, brother.